just before COVID hit, I was starting to get physical mediumship in my Friday nights events, audience events.
Mm.
So I was reading for a lady in the audience once. Her father made these fisherman hooks and a fisherman hook just dropped, and he designed his own fisherman hooks. And things like coins would drop, and then we had a problem in the audiences where contents were swapping between handbags. We weren't touching anything, or no one in the audience was stealing. So things were disappearing, missing, bangs. A lot of people were seeing a lot of transfiguration. So at the end of the audience event, I would sit, and the audience would sit. We'd tone the lights down, and we'd sit and do a meditation before I closed the audience event. And a lot of people just didn't see me in the chair. There was full transfiguration. That caused some problems because a couple of people would scream, seeing their mother standing there, or so over the years that physical mediumship team started to hijack the mental mediumship team on Friday nights. So we were having mixed bags of stuff going on, an occasional scream in the audience in meditation, or
Welcome to Soul Explorers with your hosts, Gary Langley and Sally Taylor. Welcome to Soul Explorers. Today we have all the way from Australia, Louise Hermann with us. We like to bring you really good mediums, and Louise is, in my book, one of the very best. Sally and I are really pleased to have you here. Welcome to the show, Louise.
thank you very much.
We're really happy to have you with us today, Louise. And as we were talking right before we got started, we were talking about all the many forms of mediumship that you have experienced during your time here on Earth and working as a medium, and everything from mental mediumship to trance mediumship to physical mediumship, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something. But
Healing.
how healing work, absolutely, healing mediumship. So how has all of that come to you? If I remember a little bit of your story, your mother was a medium, is that correct? And then how did
Yes,
that
yes.
develop for you?
Yes. So Mum attended the spiritualist church when I was 10 years of age. My brother passed. He passed as a result of drowning. He was 20 years of age. And so I had some experience in that early time. And my mum was very much involved with the spiritualist church at that time. And she had a really good friend, a best friend that lived 2 doors up, and they were right into spirituality and mediumship. So that was quite normal for us growing up. We never had any sleepovers because there was so much activity in our house that Mum got every complaint from the kids' parents. So sleepovers were just about banned. Like the doors were always squeaking and there was noises and stuff. So, our house was full of it. I look back, our house was full of physical phenomena. And so we grew up with it with a lot of normality. And then in my late 20s, it very much started to develop rapidly. And I remember going to Mum, and Mum said, I can't help you. You are going to have to develop your relationship with your spirit team. I'm not getting involved. Nobody can help you up on that platform at all. She gave no advice. She didn't come to any of my events. So Mum had the belief that once you start relying on humans on this side for that power and that assistance, then you're losing that, ability to keep and maintain that connection to your own spirit team. So mine developed very quickly. I was probably running before I was walking. So I stood up and did an audience event before I was a demonstration, before I was doing individual readings. So I did my own one on audience demonstration, and then everything sort of just came my way naturally. Some funny stories along the way. My spirit team did sort of teach a lot of lessons along the way. So a friend took me along to a spiritualist church, and this poor lady was trying to get a reading, and she didn't understand absolutely anything. And I was sitting with a friend, Margarita, at the time, and this lady was Chinese, and you know, they were getting frustrated with the person trying to give the message, and I just fell asleep, and my Chinese guide just came roaring through and spoke to her in her own language and gave her a reading. And all I remember is coming out of trance and being thrown out of this spiritualist church in Sydney. So then not only was I thrown out, my good friend that was part of that church was thrown out as well. So she said, well, let's just bring it to my house. So she opened a house up, and her husband was a non-believer, and the house was overrun by Italians and Greeks every Friday night. Then he went and booked the first hall, and that was the beginning of it all. And he claims he was the start, even though he was skeptical. He basically threw us out as well. So it was all forced of circumstances, and then things just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and that was the beginning.
I find it interesting the spiritualist church tossed you out because what, you spoke in a different language? Was that?
Well, I wasn't the medium on the day, and things just weren't happening. So I was part of the audience group, and I
Oh,
went into trance in the audience, and the guide obviously cut in and just gave this woman a message, and of course that's not protocol, but instead of celebrating it, it was the opposite. So, but it was a favor for us because it forced us out of that, or forced Margarita out of that. And then she opened a house up, and then her husband, who kicked us out of the house because of all the Italians and Greeks turning up, he then booked the first hall. So a lot of it, but looking back now, was circumstantial, but you can see the spirit world accelerated things very quickly. We wouldn't have had our own halls all over the place if a number of events of us being tossed out of places didn't occur.
well, isn't life like that? Because we say, oh, we had this bad experience, but we don't know where that's leading us. We have to be
Yeah, yeah,
open to the
absolutely,
possibilities. I mean, I've gone through that this year, and
absolutely.
I'm open to the possibilities, and there are new things happening. So,
Force change, and it also clears the energy, anything that's residual, like you, Gary, you've been through the fire and everything. But what it does is it clears something like that, just clears absolutely everything.
yeah,
And it clears the pathway, and it's not disrespectful. It clears the people that are also vibrationally holding you down as well.
right,
So,
exactly. And
you
I
know,
want to say publicly here, um, as busy as Louise is, she took the time to write to me on 2 or 3 occasions after I went through this experience, just checking in on me. And that meant a lot. Thank you, Louise, for
yeah.
that.
No, that's okay, Gary. You're always in my thoughts, and our healing group was sending you energy as well.
Oh, nice. Nice. Well
Yeah.
received.
One of the things that I've loved about you when I've listened to you speak, Louise, is your very no nonsense approach. And
Mm.
perhaps that is because you were forced to sink or swim as you were developing. But you really are just the most go-getter kind of a medium that I have ever seen. You've talked about the fact that you get names, and a lot of mediums say like, oh, don't expect names. I never get names. How do you experience that? How does it come to you so that you have that clarity? Is it just because of the way that you developed, or do you have tips or techniques for other people who have told themselves they're not capable?
Okay, this is a really, really good question. And I believe this is the answer of all 20 years of doing audience events and individual, is that we've really got to take ownership from our part. In mediumship, there's a lot of my guides and I have come head to head over the years on certain things where they've said, Louise, this isn't possible. And I'll throw it back to them and say, well, let's take a risk. Let's take a risk on this. And we have to be willing to put ourselves out there, and we have to be willing to say to the recipient, look, I could be wrong. And the irony of it is, every time I say that, all my volunteers say, every time you say, Louise, in an audience demonstration, look, I could be wrong here, you're always right, because you've lowered the expectation down. and you've made yourself vulnerable. And the key in mediumship is vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable enough that anything can pounce into your mind. So, an example that I had on the weekend was this dog, and this lady had a number of dogs. And she said, I need to know it's one particular dog. I said, look, I'm going to talk to the dog. I really don't know if the dog's going to be able to give me its name and that. And then what I do is I let the power build up. So animals are sometimes a little bit harder to work with than humans because they don't really understand, what's all this nonsense. I just want to talk to the owner. So I was building that power up and I didn't have an expectation. So I just said, look, let's just build the power up and we'll just see if it drops in. And the next probably minute or two, when I was talking about something else, something that the dog liked, toy they're playing with, whatever it is, you really got to build that power up. And then I heard Barnaby. So there was like a political leader in Australia called Barnaby Joyce, and I heard Barnaby, and then I saw Barnaby Joyce. I said, Barnaby. I thought, you got to be joking, Louise. No one would name a dog Barnaby. Lucky I didn't say it. And she said, that's my dog. His name's Barnaby. Okay. So you have to be willing to say to people, look, I'm going to give this a shot. And it could be wrong. Names are really hard to get. And I use the term to people, it's a bit like finding an air pocket through mud. And that lowers people's expectation. So on the weekend, I heard Barnaby as clear as anything. And then there'll be times I'd hear, most of the time, and there's not enough energy. It's not my fault. They just don't have enough energy to project that through. And it's only through 20 years experience, I'm able to then bring the vowels together and go, right, I'm getting like Barney, something like Barney. Okay. So in terms of names, it requires a certain amount of power at a certain time. And it will project in, but I'm not blaming the spirit world for this. There's some hopeless communicators over there as well, no different to this side of life. So if you're reading for someone that's a very difficult person that's got their arms crossed and they want to prove everything, that is drawing the medium's power, whether that's in an audience event or an individual. It's drawing the energy of the medium plus the communicator. Or in that instance, you could have a communicator that was stubborn in life and they don't change. And they were poor communicators. And sometimes I get communicators that are absolutely fantastic. 3, 4, 5 names came through on the weekend for one reading, and you'll go into another reading, you'll get one. And I never, ever kick myself up over it because I just think that person was a bad communicator or they didn't do their homework. They're lazy people in the spirit world. My guides would have said, go down the earth plane, get some names a couple of days before. Louise likes the names. Do this, do that, do that. And they come to the meeting with half of their homework done. I'm a believer of that. And they lose all essence of time and space. So, and they don't come and do their meditation from the other side, which a lot of people go, Louise, I don't believe in that. Well, I do. If you want, some people I'll do a reading for and they'll sit for me in the reading on a video call and they're in a meditative state. And that person I'm reading for that's on the spiritual path will get everything coming through. They'll get names, details, stuff that normal people won't get because they're giving the power to the medium and the communicator. You get someone there crossing their arms, don't want to be involved, you're going to be limited on your information. Same on that side. You get your communicator, lazy, doesn't want to do their homework, not building the power up for a 40-minute session or whatever it is. I'm sorry, it's no different to this side of life. Don't expect too much from the medium if you're not coming prepared. So sometimes the developing mediums put so much on themselves, and I say, well, it works 3 ways. Mediumship is 3-way.
You just said what I was thinking, that it's a 3-way street in this case because the medium is the intermediary between the other two. So you do very much relate it to the energy, both of the spirit coming through, the energy of the medium, and the energy of the sitter. So it sounds like preparing people for a reading is actually an important part of the process then
Absolutely.
potentially.
Absolutely. And even when I start a reading, I say to people, look, we're going to run for 40 minutes. That's about as long as what the spirit walk can hang on for. It's a bit like them finding an air pocket through mud. Otherwise, everyone would be seeing and hearing and feeling them all day. And this cling, oh, that makes sense. I haven't seen or heard anyone in years. So it must be hard. It's an expectation. And then everything you hit them with after that's a bonus.
I've
Okay?
often told people as well that our loved ones on the other side have talents, and they'll come through based on what their talent is. So if one's good at
Absolutely.
giving songs, you'll get songs from them all the time. If somebody's good at
Yeah.
leaving dimes, you'll find dimes everywhere because that's their specialty. And the
Yeah.
key
And
is
it's worked. And it's worked,
yes,
Sally.
it
It's
got their
worked.
attention. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And they give up. On the other side, I'm a strong believer that they give up. I truly believe that. So if someone's been over there for a lot of years, no one ever looks at it from the spirit communicator's perspective. That's all the time I'm looking at it from that perspective, the rope bridge. I call it the rope bridge. It's totally dysfunctional. People hanging off it from everywhere. They don't know what they're doing, okay? And for years, they're just full of disappointment. So often at the end of a reading, I'll say to someone, I feel as though you were guided to me in the most obscure circumstance. And they'll go, you wouldn't believe it. I overheard someone talking about you in a shopping center. And, because the spirit world was desperate to get that communication. So I think they choose their medium. I'm a strong believer in that. And I think that there's a whole marketing team on the other side. I have seen that in an out-of-body experience. I saw a kid with a skateboard with a flag on the back of it, promoting mediumship. I've been to lectures on the other side where I was the lecturer on mediumship. And and there's people in the spirit world that don't believe in the process. Like, people don't believe that. I've lectured the process on the other side. And look, get yours love unsorted. I'm a medium on earth, and there's people there that are going through grief in the transitory area, and go and find a medium here and there. And I'm a guide for living upcoming mediums in the UK and US. So while I'm asleep, I go to my body and I help developing mediums, and I'm their guide.
This brings up another point. And first I want to say mediums in general should quit saying I never get names, because they're reinforcing that. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
just
absolutely.
leave that statement alone. But Wendy Zamet asked me to specifically ask you about your out of body adventures at night.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So I have very, very vivid experiences, especially in the transition area. The transition area is very interesting for me. Um, so I lost a friend last year, and I went into the transition area just shortly after she passed. She was relatively young, and I saw her through a crowd of hundreds of people. And I saw her, she saw me, and it's a love pool, like a love connection, and you sort of float above everybody else. And we hugged each other. She showed me her little room and a little ensuite, and we sat and talked for a while, and then we sat on the edge of a building and watched the parade go past, and she told me about all the entertainment that was over there. And then, of course, she gave me some evidence to come back and give to her family. But the experiences over there differ depending whether or not I'm there as a visitor or I'm there for work. So sometimes you go over there and you ask them questions and you kick yourself. You come back and think, I should have asked this or I should have asked that. And a lot of it, you meet guides that are over there, or people that are, and this would probably not be in your concept at all, but guides in training, guides with training wheels on. Okay, so a developing medium will often have a guide. I always say, look, when someone's developing, they're expecting a very advanced guide to come and work with them. Now, sorry to disappoint you guys out there. You will get that dysfunction from a guide, the same as what your dysfunction is on your level. So a 101 developing guide won't get a 401 level guide because they won't go off their project. They're too busy doing physical mediumship, trance, audience events. They're teaching the other guides, or they're practicing advanced projects, and they don't take their eye off their advanced projects. So in terms of me going to the other side, I've met a lot of developing guides. And they'll often come and say, look, I've been sitting in your audiences, I've been sitting with you in your work, or sitting you in your readings, physical, and we're learning this. What are your thoughts on this? You know? So I'll just say, look, I did this or I do that. You guys could do this better. So the developing guides over there, some of them have never, ever been a guide. They've only been like a random guide for a relative. But apart from that, they got absolutely no idea how it works in the physical body because they weren't mediums. So we're not thinking of it from that perspective. And so those experiences come in there as well.
The fact is that we continue to learn. This earth plane is not the only place we learn. And the fact that you're teaching other people about mediumship in the other planes of existence is actually really fascinating to me, because I agree with you. Some people are definitely better communicators than others. I have learned a level of mediumship myself. I'm not a Louise Hermann, but I get some clear information. But I know when I'm supposed to do a reading, because I know that I'm going to get that individual clearly. And so I accept those readings when I know ahead of time that I'm the person that's meant to do it, because of whatever resonance or whatever connection. Honestly, my son comes in with them all the time and says, do this one. Right. But so talk to us about the consensus realities. That's a discussion that Gary and I've been having lately on the other side. And how are there people that don't know about mediumship and what they need to do if they want to come through to their families in that way?
Yeah. So when you talk about the consensus realities, are you talking about people that just having consent for this or knowledge of this, or?
Well, I mean, that they live in an environment where maybe they think it's still quite Earth-like, perhaps.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
They haven't sort of evolved beyond those realms to the point that they have sort of deeper knowledge about the ability to communicate with their loved ones still here on Earth.
Absolutely. And also belief systems are very much a part of us when we go over there. So, you know, that when you have those belief systems and you go over, and often, and I'm not disrespectful to any other psychic or medium, they could have had a bad experience where they've gone through a medium that is not a good communicator and has communicated, or a psychic, which has happened, communicated very negative information, so they never use that service again. So that's important, that it comes from a trust, and also psychologists and counselors as well assist with that process.
One thing I'd like to bring up, Louise, and it's just been, I mean, I know people that are medium junkies, and I keep advising them, don't do that. Make your own connection. Ultimately, once you are convinced the afterlife exists, but I see too many mediums or self-acclaimed mediums not doing a very good job, and I think it kind of gives the whole field a bad name when they need to sit and develop more. And not be so anxious to be out there with the shingle hanging out front. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And I strongly believe there's a time and a place for mediumship. Often I'm never ever one to pass on messages out in the street or in restaurants or at parties. None of that whatsoever. It's quite the opposite. I get sort of harassed out everywhere I go. I'll go to birthdays, or I'll go to parties, or I'll go to funerals. Are the worst place for me. People come up and go, is so and so here? There's a time and a place for absolutely everything. And we've got to think of ourselves, when we are truly a messenger of the spirit world, we've got to think of ourselves as a battery pack, a medium that's there to serve, an instrument with a certain amount of work to do. Now, the needs come first before the wants. So I don't waste my power or my energy on anything that I believe or foresee to be just a want and not a need. There's a whole range of, as you work further and further with the spirit world, you become an instrument for up to 200 or 300 workers on the other side, psychologists, social workers, everybody. So you know, that for me, when I work, I trust in that energy and trust in that power that I will be utilized in a certain manner for certain healing to be done. And sometimes that might involve me just sitting near someone and I'll feel really drawn, like everything's taken out of me, and they'll go off, you know. Or you know, that my stepfather passed away last week, and I was in ICU with him, and everybody was, you know, all the family was around him, and then I just had a moment to myself, and I can't describe it. It was just a moment. Only weeks before, I heard a song in my mind driving on the freeway, and it stuck in my mind. And then this song came on the TV, and I thought, Louise, you got to go to work. It was like a click. I can't describe it. And nobody else was in the room, which everybody was in the room. The whole family was in the room. And the doctor said, look, you know, we'll wind down the oxygen. We've got to do all this sort of stuff. And something went click, 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 like I'd rehearsed this. I need to go to work. That's the best way to describe it. And I went up to him and I put my hand on his heart and put my hand on his chest. And he knew what I did and he was open to it, but he wasn't on the spiritual path to a great degree like my mother. And I gave him everything I had. And I said to him, you just go with mum. And I said, this is your chance. And he did. And they came back in, and my sister came back in, and she saw someone standing in the corner behind me. And she doesn't see people very often, but she saw someone standing behind me. And it was like a figure. And he went the most peaceful way that anybody could go. He went in like a meditation state, and he wasn't into this. He knew I did my events and he was all for it. And my twin sister had a massive headache. And I explained to her, that's from drawing all the power out of us. And all that excess energy then went into the rooms next door for those that were in induced comas. So I sat that morning, before we even knew that Graham was going that day, before we were called into a meeting, I sat that morning and did a meditation in that room for about an hour and built the power up. And said, whatever you want to do in this room, you do it, whether it's used next door or in any other 8 of those rooms here where I am in ICU. And, you know, that for me, I look at it that way, that I know, and I knew that he would be very difficult to work with because he wasn't open to say, he was open but not open. And he went the quickest I've ever seen anyone go. And I think that was trust and love simply for me. And I think the power was strong enough that he went in such a peaceful state without any struggle whatsoever. So did I hold my energy up for the week? He was only in hospital for a week. Did I hold my power up? Yes, I probably did. Did I go to events and take my excess from those? Did I go to the workshop and get the excess? I probably did, and built the power up in my energy field. So we use our power in so many different ways, but I don't believe it was just for my stepfather. I believe it was used for other beds that were in that ICU area as well. And there was a much bigger picture going on.
Yes, because you were there, they're going to utilize that.
Absolutely.
Now,
and nobody knew about it except me, you know.
right. Now, I have a question. You mentioned you have a twin sister. I can't believe
Yeah.
there are 2 of you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, does she have your abilities or to some degree?
Yeah, absolutely. She's a big animal rescuer, huge
Okay.
animal rescuer, rescues cows, horses, echidnas, anything that walks up the property. And very, very, very in tune. Very, very in tune. She doesn't do mediumship that I do, but we're very much in tune with each other. And she's got a lot of guts and a lot of get up and go and straight up front with a lot of stuff. So we use each other's power sometimes. But yes, the only difference is she's not doing mediumship like I am, but unbelievably we message each other and I'll think of things and she'll pick up things. And so yes, it's just the energy, her energy's almost or is just as strong as mine, but used in a different capacity.
Different way. And twins tend to have that. kind of connection with each other, even if they're
Yeah.
not, even if they're not mediums or psychics.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've got it layered on, because not only are you twins and you have that connection, but you're a medium and she has abilities as well.
Let me ask you a question about how you understand building power.
Yeah.
It's a really
Yeah.
common phrase for people who are familiar with spiritualism or spiritism. Those groups of people kind of use that term very frequently, but most of the
Mm.
rest of the world doesn't really even know maybe what you mean by that. So how do you conceive of it? What does it feel like when you're
Yeah.
building power for this
Yeah.
work?
Okay, okay. I've probably got a bit of a different perspective on things. Someone made a comment, a good friend of mine made a comment yesterday. They were doing a reel on play, adult play. And they were talking about this, that that adults don't know how to roll around and have fun and all of that. And she said to me, Louise, that's what you do all the time. Okay, it's like, and that's what a lot of people make comment about, of how childlike I actually am. You see this wisdom come out in this call, but when I hang out with friends and stuff, a lot of them say, Louise, you're like a kid that's never grown up. Okay, so I often laugh about a lot of stuff, and I can laugh at myself, and I don't care what people think, just like a small child, I suppose. And I'll talk to everybody like a small child does, a toddler, without having those filters. So for me, building the power comes for me out of service and out of fun. So I don't do your standard meditation. So before a reading, I'll have a meditation state, but before that reading, I'll give you two examples. So before an individual reading, people think I'm doing hum, hum, ha, ha. I don't do any of that. I'll have a name of a person, and I will sit and I will focus through service. So there's two ways I believe you can build your power up. In an individual reading, I build that up through service. So I'll have a name, and I don't know, I'll look at the name and I'll go, right, okay, Sally, what is it that you have come to me here for? And I might circle and use my hand over that name, because in an audience environment, you don't know who's coming. It's just all open. So in an individual, if I was doing an individual reading, and I see Sally's name, I would say, Sally, what is it why has your higher self brought you to me today? What is it you need to hear from me? Who is it you need to hear from? What evidence do you need to hear first for you to listen to me? Okay. People only listen when there's evidence first. It bursts the ego. So who is it we need to bring forward first to get Sally's attention, to let Sally listen to us? And what is it Sally has come here for? So that individual reading is done out of service, out of open heart, and empathy. What I noticed was that I did some readings on the weekend, and in between those readings, I was crying. I had music on. I was crying in between some of them with my stepfather that had passed only that week. But the readings that followed were beyond normal. They were at such a high level, because of the empathy, the compassion, and the level of me in that knowingness and vulnerability and connection to the other side was so strong. I was yearning for that. And I was joking with him in the morning. He never knew what I did, but I'd text him and say, look, don't call me during the day, because he'd ring. If he wanted something, he'd ring 3 times and interrupt. And I'd say, don't come in and interrupt all day. I'm doing these readings. And I had a joke with him in the morning. I felt him around, so he got to see my work for the first time. So when you're doing that, your power builds up through service to the other person, but the empathy. And I think when we've been through our own loss, personally, lots of people say, well, Louise, when you go through your own loss, you shouldn't be doing any readings. And I say, no, it's the most powerful. Because I understand when that empathy, when you're in your own grief and you're reading for someone in grief, your connection through grief catapults you both up to a certain level. So that's a way to build your power up as well. It won't build your power up, though, if you're in a victimization mode.
Right. Grief is not necessarily a low vibration.
No, no.
necessarily.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there are
yeah, yeah.
certain cultures that say that people in grief are actually in a really special state. You know, they're Native
Yeah,
American tribes that really venerate their people who are grieving. And I think that's
yeah.
maybe something we've missed the boat on in Western culture.
Yeah, I was saying to a funeral director the other day, dying is an inconvenience. And she looked at me. Okay, and it is. It's an inconvenience on it's outsourced. We've outsourced vacuuming and mowing the lawn, outsourced aged care. You know, I slept over in aged care for 3 weeks. I saw a lot of death, sleeping with mum and holding the hand. Got up, dealt with every situation you could deal with. Huge inconvenience, huge inconvenience. Even in hospitals, people just come and go and let people die on their own. Big inconvenience. Okay. And I've been blessed that I've been around 3 parents when they've passed, and they've all died peacefully with all the siblings around them and in a meditative state or a very peaceful state. So, it's a huge inconvenience dying, the process itself these days. So I believe that. And I think that our connection with the other side is so strong when we understand that, or when we educate people that, your loved ones will force you out of the room, and then you'll be the only one present when somebody's there because they'll hold them back. So we build our power through service, wanting to truly get over ourselves, not sit as a medium. This is the biggest block to build someone's power. When you're about to start a reading and you're sitting there thinking, I've got to get this right. I want a name. I want that. And you're sitting there with this checklist of all this expectation, and you're not thinking about the needs. It's all the medium wants. It's not the needs of the recipient. And you're not open to absolutely anything that can come through, and not open to the possibility less of me, more of them. So that power, Sally, can build even further. I was reading for someone on the weekend, and son and I got along really well. I said, look, we get along really well. He likes me, I like him. How about we go to the next level where there's less of me, more of him? And I'm a trance medium, so let his mannerisms overflow me. Are you open to that? Yes, absolutely. So, so that power builds up more if we can go into a deeper altered state and continually say to yourself, less of me, mate, more of you, and let them blend, because sometimes it can be a mannerism that comes through, or the way you talk, or even your language, or your nicknames, or the way you speak. Sometimes I'll come out with an English accent or an East Londoner, and they'll go, that was my dad. That's how he spoke, you know? So that power builds further and further. So that's the first way you build your power, and also through fun. So before I set up an audience event, volunteers are setting up chairs. I'm setting up the table. I'm having a bit of a swirl. Everyone's having a laugh. It's totally dysfunctional. Then I go and get dressed, and we got 10 minutes to focus and think, right, I've got to go out there. And it's all been fun with the volunteers. It's not in a meditative state. I don't get 5 minutes to myself. All the volunteers coming in and out. I'm getting dressed, getting that. Louise, we need another chair up the back. We got someone that's disabled. Can we move this? And we do that. So that's all fun, building that power up. So there's never a time in any of my mediumship where I've sat in meditation where there's nothing going on and no movement, or there's no, focusing on a piece of paper, or focusing on an audience and going, right, let's do the best we can. And we've got to remember, the more that we're relaxed, the more they're relaxed, because they'll drain that power out. So,
Right. Well, you were talking about, a medium having that sort of desperation of getting all these like bucket lists, or, grocery list type, all of those little bullet points they want to meet. That actually puts a wall around
yeah,
what spirit's
absolutely.
able to bring in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the more open to possibility you are for what they want to bring in, they bring the evidence without you having to necessarily ask for it, don't they?
Absolutely. Well, if you are developing where you're serious in what you do, the spirit team have already sorted that out with them, worked out their shorthand, worked out their symbols. I'm a believer of this. Before I do an audience event on Thursday night, just before I go to sleep, I'll get sound checks, vision checks. I see, hear, feel, and I ignore all of that on a Thursday night because they're just sound checks and vision checks of people that are stressed on the other side that have no belief in the system. And the guides say, look, in order for you to not drain the audience out and all the power on Friday night, we'll let you do a sound check and a visual check. And I ignore all that information. So mediums go and run with that and go, oh, I've got a message for you. And it's like 10 messages of just a sound check and it's not for anyone in particular. It's not knowing that there's a possibility before a reading day or before an audience event that there's going to be a visual check and a sound check of the spirit. And they'll go, I got through. Yeah, and the guides will say, yes, see, you got through. Don't draw the energy of the medium on the day of the reading. Just come through, be relaxed. She will see you, she will hear you, and they'll be excited. And then they will come with excitement. So we've got to be open to that possibility of sound and visual checks on certain days or a day before a reading, and don't bring any of that into your readings. I know that some people see and hear and feel certain information, and then they'll bring that into a reading the next day and go, oh, I was going to bed last night and I saw it. Well, that could have been from 10 people for 5 different readings.
Mm-hmm.
And that ruins the start of their reading and ruins their confidence.
I'm laughing because I have made that mistake. I have made that exact mistake because I get a lot at night.
Yeah. And sometimes
I'm like, that
it
must
can
be
just
for somebody tomorrow. Yeah.
No, but if you're doing a day of readings, it's just a sound check and a visual check.
Yeah.
You said something I find really important, and I notice it in Zoom groups that I'm involved with, and humor, lightness, having fun changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you got to be prepared that having fun can really bring out someone's healing. You got to be prepared for some punching bags on that one as well. So I have a lot of humor, and so does my spirit team. And I was at a workshop, and they changed their content. So I'll say to them, look, I've channeled all these notes through, and then the notebook goes down, and that's it. I'm all for it. And these 2 students are barning at each other, and they're having a big argument. And I said, this is a great topic, and they didn't think it was funny whatsoever. And then it brings up a really good discussion. Then everybody's laughing. There's been a barning in between, and that's it. And often, especially, and you'd know this, Sally, when people lose children, there's a lot of anger. And sometimes they think you represent God.
Right. Huh.
You represent God, and it can just fire on all cylinders. So when you're reading a parent that's lost a child, often my guides will bring through the funniest piece of information to start off with, which just blows it out. You know, I got a young man here. He's got a burnt mark at the back of his backside where he's put his bum near the fire and lit it up, and he had to be rolled over and a fire extinguisher on him, and he went with, 1st-degree burns to the hospital, and he had to have 2 weeks off school. And so that's usually what breaks the ice, because they'll say, that was my son. He got 2 weeks off school and he got burnt his backside out, and it just breaks the ice, and it stops the power being drained of expectations. I want to know exactly what he was buried with and what note was in there. And that does come, and that builds, that's my son. And anything after that is just a bonus.
Right. And it's the evidence that comes that you couldn't have had a bullet point for, right?
Yeah.
It's the crazy story that you could have never said, this is the evidence. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, giving evidence, you've got to be willing to put yourself out there. And I am a bit of a storyteller. I can receive what I call the download in a split second, like a USB. I can get the story down to the T just about. And I can say who was there, who was in the car, what was packed in the boot, because I'm interested in that. Okay? And I'm interested in that. So if you're interested in a medium, in a good story, and you go, I got your son here, he burned his backside out, and he got taken to hospital and all the rest of it. And it may be that you say to yourself, how did you do something as stupid as that? And the next thing you know, you see his mate throwing a baked beans tin in the fire. and it exploded. And then you extend that story and say he threw a baked beans tin in the fire, exploded. Not only did he get hurt, mum and dad had to pay for everyone's chairs that got holes in them. You know what I mean? And it adds and it builds what I call the power up further. Okay, so you've got to be interested in that even more. So I believe the power builds up the more we engage, the more we get into that, and the more we're willing to say, hey, I could have this wrong, and I know, are you with me? Are you willing to go this a little bit further? I know I've just described your mother's chest of drawers that she etched her name in, and your son scratched his name in on the third drawer with a knife. Can we see if I can open that third drawer and see what's in it in your house now? And then you open it in your mind and say, there's a small little alarm clock that the other side of the family, your husband's father, gave, and it's sitting in there and it no longer works. Yes, that's it. And then you're able to stop and say, how could I evidentially possibly know of all that information plus something that's existing now and you're across the other side of the world or wherever? Okay, so we've got to be willing, Sally, to dig deeper, and we've got to be willing to be wrong.
That's it. And be okay with being wrong if you are, that it doesn't crush your confidence. And that's what I love about you. You've got such amazing confidence. And for me, that's the reason you're as good a medium as you are.
Yeah, and I think it's confidence in myself and the spirit. Well, I've never got confidence in a sitter. There's no way have I got confidence in anybody I read for. I don't trust in anyone. Some people will sit and do their meditation. That's rare. That's 1%, And some people say, Louise, I'm giving you this power. And I'll say, fantastic. And that's great, but I'm not relying on it. I don't rely on it. Yeah, I'll say to them, I'm not relying on anyone's power. And also as the power starts to deplete, you need to say, look, the power's depleting. Don't expect that much. We've done, and you've got to be willing. A lot of people just want to have everything on a high and leave it all on a high instead of having teaching in that. So a lot of people, you might do a really good reading and you go, you know what? This reading's had a lot of power in it. Today, I've asked my team to give some nicknames, right? Today's nickname day. Now that we've had a good reading, and I could be wrong, there's about a 99% chance I'm going to be wrong. Can we use this reading at the end of it because we've had a little bit more power than the average and you've got what you've wanted out of this reading? Can we try something? How about you ask me a question, see if I can answer it? And that's another thing. Halfway through a reading, I will ask people, have you got any questions? Mediums don't do that. In an audience environment, you can't do that. You can't do that in an audience environment, not at all. You can't do that because you've only got 10 or 10 minutes really to do a reading and move on. Otherwise, everyone's problems come out in that 10 minutes. But how many mediums stop halfway through a reading and say, at 20 minutes, my alarm goes off, ding, 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 ding. And I say, have you got any questions? And often the person comes back and says, you've answered all the questions. Well, that's good. The spirit team's done their homework. Now, I want to know something else. And often they don't get the chance to ask the question and I've already got the answer. So that's the biggest tip. Don't let people ask questions in the beginning because it's setting you back and not letting you build the power and let the spirit world come through with what they need. Don't let them up. Most people never most mediums, especially developing mediums, never open the floor up because they're worried about something that's going to ask them a question. They're going to be shot down or they won't get it right. So I, at the 20-minute mark, will say, right, sometimes even earlier, my team will prompt and I'll say, there seems to be a lot going on. I'm going to open the floor up for any questions you have. And often, a medium will expect, and they never open the floor up, they're going to expect people to say, what was Grandpa Jack's nickname? They won't ask that. You've already covered evidence and evidence and evidence and evidence. And by then the power's built up where you're able to go, right, have you got any questions? They're now after your wisdom. They're now after the wisdom and the knowledge and the guidance of the spirit world because you've spent the last 20 minutes given the evidence, given some guidance, and now they want to know more. Where do I go forward? Where am I at, and where do we steer with this? So that fear of never opening the floor up for questions, I believe, blocks the medium immensely in their development as well.
Yeah, I agree. And spirit doesn't want to just show up only to give evidence of themselves, only to prove
Yeah.
that they are who they are. They generally want to have a conversation. They want to say something more. And it's important to give them that
absolutely.
opportunity.
Yeah, and also they're not cardboard cutouts. I had an interesting reading on the weekend. I read for a lady. I said, I got your father here. He was a brilliant builder. I said, he's just so gifted. And I described everything down to the T. And she said, oh my God, nobody has described my father like that for many, many years. And she cried and she said, he shot and killed someone else and he killed himself. And I said to her, well, your father's not a bad person. He just did a bad thing. He's moved on beyond that. He had a moment of madness. He had undiagnosed mental health. So she was trapped in this vision idea of who her father was, yet he was this brilliant man. I didn't get any outs of him being a bad person. He was mentally unwell and had a moment of madness, which resulted in somebody's life being taken and his own. And he has since healed from that from 30, 40 years ago. And that's all underneath the carpet. So, you know, that again, if you are a medium looking for negative drama in people, I could have brought him through here. I've got somebody here that is suicide and murdered someone. My mind could have picked that up in his energy field. I didn't. I said he's an excellent builder, and I described what he built. And she said, by the way, only recently I've been driving past some of the houses that he built and thought of how talented he was. So again, are you a medium interested in negative drama, or are you a medium searching for information that will only heal? We already know, everybody in the family and all the friends of the family are already talking about that he shot and killed somebody and he killed himself. That's known knowledge. What we want is information that nobody else is talking about this person, and that's what they want to be remembered for. And so that for her was a huge amount of healing. And as a medium, we need to be mindful. Are we in seeking in our mind for information that heals? And do we need to go on for 15 minutes about how somebody died when they already know how they died? We don't need to go into all those details. What happened? Who were they collected by? And you know, they may have been collected by mum, who had this favorite song, and they were, that was mum's favorite song. She played it over and over and over. Well, when your brother passed away, your mum came with that song, and it just drove him mad for 3 days since he passed. He heard it over and over and over in the transition area, you know, and try and seek for things that heal, because a lot of it's not just the shopping list, it's looking for the old person that existed in the last pages of the book of life that they had.
I think what you said is critically important, and I'm sure this is probably part of your credo, but I was in a panel where several people were getting readings, and I think the medium's credo should be do no harm. And what you're saying is bring out the positive.
Yeah.
That brings on healing much easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a medium say to me, and it kind of did shake me for a couple of days. I don't mean to scare you, but have you been to the doctor lately? And I said, yeah, last Friday. And I'm thinking, well, maybe they missed something. You know, that's like poor mediumship etiquette.
Yeah. And it's a very good question, Gary, when it comes to medical, because I've done hands-on psychic surgery. I've got a lot of spirit doctors that are with me. I'll actually say, hey, I've got a spirit doctor that's with me from the other side now. You've had some issues around your knee area, or yes, I've had some issues around that. Or I'll say, that it's usually the opposite to me. So I'm very, very careful where I say, okay, I don't bring in any predictions in there. I'll leave a bit of information that's something positive that I call the wow factor. So at the end of a reading, always the one piece of evidence not validated is my wow factor that's yet to come in the next week or two. And I couldn't have done that. But often with medical, I will say, look, I can see this. There's been this already going on. You've been running bloods. Is that correct? You're getting your bloods done? Yes, yes, yes. So it's stuff that it's existing. It's stuff that they already know about. And I'll just say, look, just make sure that they go in and they run a little bit around your potassium levels. I'm not seeing any red flags. I've got absolutely no concerns here. But they're just showing me here that maybe you need to eat more bananas and increase your levels this way. And that's what they give to me here now. And often someone will email me and say, I went and got my potassium levels checked and they weren't right. Or so it's conditions that are existing. And as I'm scanning here, I can see this. I can see a bit of atrial fibrillation that you've got here. Your heartbeat's been a bit out of whack. And I can see that your mum had that as well as your sister. But I'm not too concerned about that whatsoever. I'm just letting you know that those in spirit are very well aware of it, and you need to hand it over to them more to guide and help you around that going forward in your life. So all of that medically is never, ever would I bring in a prediction. There is absolutely no healing in that whatsoever. And there's no prediction. Even people book in and come into a reading and say, I want to know when mum's dying because I've had enough of her. We have caring for her. And also people under universal law, that can never, ever be revealed. There's no healing in knowing when somebody passes. Because all you're doing is you're causing stress. So medical is something you can only talk about in a past tense. And then if they confirm that they have a condition around that area, then you can provide some advice from the spirit doctors on what they can potentially do naturally. Or I never, ever say get off medication. I'm for both West and Eastern methods. And I'll just say, okay, and they'll be up front. If they're diabetic, hey, come on, they're showing me here, you're not doing your part of the deal. You're eating every bit of chocolate in the shopping centre, So you need to step up, and your mum knows you've been doing it because she did it. That's why she was diabetic. She ate all the chocolate there was in sight. So, that there's no healing in that. We can never bring up anything medically if it already isn't known.
Right. And its approach, I think the approach, there's a gentle way to approach a subject like that. And then there's that blatant way that I experienced. Interesting, you mentioned potassium because right after I went through the house fire, I had blood work done and my potassium levels were way high. Well, I went on Dr. Google and guess what causes high potassium? Trauma.
Yeah. Well, isn't it funny I used that example? I could have used absolutely anything.
I know, that's why I brought it up, because you used that example. Next time I went back, they were back down. But the trauma of going through that, there was, initial shock period, and it throws things out of whack. So
absolutely. But see, Gary, how you brought up your example. And I could have talked you. I didn't even know about your potassium levels.
Right.
And this person's saying, go to the doctor. And I'm just talking to you and letting my spirit team guide this session. And then they bring in the example of potassium.
Which is why I had to mention it. I probably would not have mentioned that otherwise, but I saw the correlation there. So
absolutely. So and then and again, that person that said you need to go to the doctor gave no specific. So I didn't say to you, Gary, I'm picking up this with you, and we're using this example for a reason. I just know that energetically it would prompt something. They always prompt using their examples. They're never examples. That is all there is that's going on with you at the moment. Does that make sense? And it settled itself down, and the spirit team sorted that out for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And keep off the bananas because they've got the potassium in it.
Well, now I'm back to normal levels now.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, but it's about letting the spirit team guide the medium. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Louise, if people want to have a reading from you or feel really drawn to you, do you have a website that?
Yeah. They just go out to Louise Hermann, HERMANN.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll put that on the screen as well. Let me ask you kind of a last question that I'm curious about. And it's a little bit predictive, so if you don't want to go there, it's okay. But where do you see mediumship evolving to in the future? Because it does seem to change with the times. And over the many
absolutely.
years you've been doing, where are we headed?
Yeah. Well, we've got a few problems at the moment with the introduction of AI in terms of our evidential. Things are becoming harder for the other side. So in terms of mental mediumship, my spirit team have had to really change the way they deliver their information, and also technology. So AI, of course, can retrieve things like a supercomputer on the internet about certain people. So now in my audiences, often the spirit team are changing in the readings. I'll say I start reading at, say, I start the event at 7:15. They will often give what the person was around 6:30 p.m. that night, leaving their home in their vehicle, what their conversations were about. And that's for multiple readings, one after the other in the audience, to prove that the medium couldn't have been in all of those locations at once. So as AI develops further and further and further, a lot of people say it's actually helping, but I see that it's hindering, because it's AI is simply, and I was part of building AI 20 years ago, working for an American software company, a major American software company, Oracle, I worked for 20 years. And so I was a part of that AI right in the beginning. And I see that's causing issues in terms of evidential. People go, well, you can get this from that, or you can get that from that. So we have to work harder in providing evidence that's beyond all reasonable doubt. And often I'll say in a reading, you're probably wondering why I'm talking about what you were doing in the vehicle just on the way here. It's to, and I'll stop the audience and say, it's to prove that I am and my team multidimensional and across time and space, that we're not limited here. And secondly, none of this information's even out on the internet, or could be gathered through an AI tool. So we're changing our way that we're doing mental mediumship in that way. In terms of physical mediumship, we really have to be moving out of that cabinet, out of the darkness, and more into the light, and not be limiting it to just small groups in a household experience, because that doesn't change consciousness. That doesn't change consciousness. The only way you can change consciousness is in large groups where everybody can witness that and go, I was sitting there, I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. We all saw and heard it at the same time. And physical mediumship is where people can, everybody, not spiritual people seeing it with a third eye, and that's something to be careful of. It's where the most skeptical people will see it with their physical eyes that don't even have their third eye open. Because the danger is in physical mediumship, you sit around with a lot of people that have their third eye open, they could be seeing it with their third eye, not with the physical eyes. Okay. So it's got to be moving more towards light. And it's got to be moving more out of the cabinet and into an open room where the most skeptical people can receive information. So I believe that they don't know. I'm always a strong believer that they're changing their viewpoints based on the madness of what goes on the earth plane. And we've got to be open to how they change the way they work. We've got to be open to moving that. And I truly believe that sometimes they just don't know. And sometimes things just work and they go, wow, that worked. Let's pursue that further and further and further. And let's see if that works, in particular ways, in another way or method, and they'll use experimental methods. And sometimes a medium may not be built for that, and another medium may be built for that, depending on the spirit team on that side, and if they're working with multiple mediums at the same time.
And I think we too often forget they're people too, and
Absolutely.
they have foibles just like we do, and they're experimenting and learning as we go.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. And I've enjoyed it. And basically, the essence of today is really we got to get over ourselves as mediums. And I always say, get over yourself and into your spirit, because at the end of the day, it is your spirit that's communicating with their spirit. So you're only as good as how much you're in your own spirit, and in your own power. And the more you can get over your own ego, and just serve and just blend and try and expect that you're going to get, in the beginning, you're going to get a lot wrong, more than what you're going to get right. And it's okay. And you're giving a gift. And Sally mentioned that earlier about my confidence. I think it's not so much my confidence, my viewpoint. My viewpoint is I'm giving this person a gift, and if you don't like it, hang up. It's as simple as that, or walk out of the room. And in 20 years, I've never had anyone hung up, and I haven't anyone in the middle of a reading do this to me and walk out of an audience demonstration. So if you view it as being a gift, then you have more value and self-value in your own self, that, hey, I'm giving this person a gift. I'm doing the best that I can. It's out of my control. And the more you do that, you're holding your own power. You're not draining it. The more you are seeking approval outside of yourself, it will drain your battery as quick as dust. Try and read as many skeptical mails as you can, okay? And try to do that to let your spirit team have the opportunity to build their power up, build their confidence up, come out with some crackers that will blow a skeptical mind away, especially males. Okay, they won't give anything. They won't even say yes or no. They come in on the defense. That is an excellent training ground. And I've seen the biggest bikies just fall over in tears. I've seen grown men cry and cry over their mothers, and have come in with the most skeptical mindset. And if you can break through those barriers the earlier in your mediumship, the better, because you get over yourself very quickly and you build that trust in yourself and in your team.
Beautifully said.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. Well, take care anyway. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You as
Thank
well,
you,
Louise.
Louise.
Lots of love. Lots of love
Yep.
to you.
And I'll be back. I'll be back.
You'll be back.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.